bystander and I see police interacting with someone else and I stop to film that interaction, what are my rights around that?
What standard or measure should we follow not to be shot or hurt?
Can you explain from the billy club or they stick, however they call it, knife stick, to the gun and what gives them the right to go to the gun?
The purpose of this event is to bring civilians together with law enforcement so we can have an open discussion about what our rights are so that as civilians we know what to assert and what not to assert when we have those interactions.
Okay, I was wondering if the requirements or prerequisites to become a police officers, if there would be changes to those, such as culture sensitivity or bias, testing those things, maybe psychology, and if they have a history of misconduct.
Articles where an arrest or detainment results in the death of a person. There's a recent one where a man was alleged to have killed himself in the back of a police vehicle. When you talk about your programs for body cams or dash camera footage, what is a way that you would ensure that we don't see people turning off their cameras, removing them, or editing the footage in any kind of a way?
So everybody knows what's going on in the world. We see that police brutality is at an all-time high. And knowing your rights is not a direct antidote to that issue, but what it does is allow civilians to have some type of legal recourse after they have these situations with law enforcement where they wouldn't know what to do otherwise.
Question: can an officer arrest you for a minor offense?
No.
Okay. The answer's no. The answer is yes. The answer is yes.
It's incumbent upon us to know our rights, especially in these turbulent times in terms of police interaction, police relationships with the citizenry. Mainly because I believe that people knowing their rights could potentially reduce these potentially volatile, violent, and sometimes deadly encounters with law enforcement.
Does the officer have the right to go to their gun if, for instance, let's say you are an officer, right? And I'm technically bigger than you in terms of my height, where if you was to pull out your stick or a taser, I can get away from that. Does that give an officer a right to automatically go to their gun?
No, not necessarily, right? Just because you're bigger. Now, of course, it's going to end up coming down to a court's decision to determine whether or not it was reasonable for that officer to fear for his or her life. But in general, this is certainly what I argue against as a criminal defense lawyer. It's like, no, you can't. Just because he's bigger than you, that's not reasonable belief that you are in imminent danger of serious bodily injury or death. It's not reasonable.
I tell all my clients and anyone that asks me that the number one objective is to come home. And we know that being compliant doesn't always make that happen, but we do know that being abrasive is more likely for there to be an issue when you do that. So I would suggest doing the best you can to be compliant and make it home safe. Then after, we can go over a checklist of what happened during that encounter, and that's when the power comes. We can pursue some type of legal recourse at that point.
So I do believe this should be taught in schools. If we take the time to try to teach students what it is to, if we have options for students to learn what it is to balance a checkbook and financial literacy in schools, then certainly along with this, do's and don'ts of police stops should also be just as important, considering that this is an integral part of existing in society and dealing with police officers out in the community.